Today, Starlight Baptist Church, coming to you from Tustin, California. And today's going to be a hodgepodge. I'm going to take basically a recap of prophetic scripture that's going to be taking place here. It's in the process, obviously, of taking place, but will play itself out over the next few years. I'm going to do this not in a really detailed way, because each and every one of these points I could spend a month on. So I'm going to just hit the highlights. If you want to do some special individual personal study on this stuff, let me give you I'll call out some passages that you can kind of look up on your own, at your own leisure there. Daniel, the book of Daniel, chapter 7 through 12. That's where a lot of this stuff comes from. Jesus quoted it extensively. Daniel chapter 7 through 12. Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. Those are two more big, super duper prophetic chapters that have to do with the Battle of Armageddon and the Battle of Gog and Magog. Matthew chapter 24 is referred to, and we call it the Olivet Discourse, because that's when Jesus came out of the temple and he had a private Bible study as such with his disciples. And that's when they specifically asked him about the end of the world and what things should be and what the sequence is going to be in the end times. And he takes the entire chapter 24 of Matthew and he goes through and he just names it just one by one through there. And of course, we get into the book of Revelation, specifically chapter 6 through the end of the book. It's all prophetic type stuff. So those are the four main big lumps of places that you can go to: Daniel, Ezekiel, Matthew, and Revelation. Starting out, with all the prophetic things that have been written and recorded in Scripture, there is nothing that has yet to be fulfilled before the rapture takes place. There's one other aspect I want to get by way of a basic background before I get into the specifics here. Last week, we looked at some of the idiosyncrasies that God uses in the method of which he puts things on paper. He'll make a statement, and then he'll go back and reiterate, stressing a different point or accentuating different points. And then he might go back a third time and accentuate different points again. This is his style. There's other styles that God has, little idiosyncrasies that, we might call them, or methods that he uses when he teaches, or just his character. And one is that he's very big on transitions. And when I say transition, I mean something like this. You remember back in Genesis, when God had made up his mind that he was going to pull the plug on the earth, that the conditions of mankind were so bad, the infiltration of the fallen angels and the demons and so forth, intermarrying and mixing with humans, had produced a hybrid race and had produced a level of sin which God just couldn't take it anymore. And at that point, he tells Noah, he says, "My spirit shall not always strive with a man." In other words, I'm not going to put up with this forever. Yet, he says, "My days shall be 120 years." So he's giving, from the time that he had made up his mind that he's going to pull the plug, he gives mankind another 120 years to get their act together. And of course they didn't, so he eventually pulls the plug. But there's that transition from the mind of God when he says, "I'm going to do it," from when he actually pulls the trigger and does it. That was 120 years. We see it again when Israel is going to go from Egypt into the promised land. The perfect scenario would have been they get out of Egypt, they hit the Red Sea, God performs the miracle, they walk across, they spend a couple of months getting their act together, getting organized, and getting the government thing all set up, getting the structure ready to go, and then boom, off into the promised land they go. Well, they screwed up. They chickened out. They were afraid. They figured the people who were already in the promised land were bigger than they, stronger than they, more numerous than they, entrenched in fortified cities and so forth. And so they just made up their mind, nah, we don't get to do it. God says, no, get up off your butts, get in there and do it. So half-heartedly, at Kadesh Barnea, they go ahead and they make an attempt to go into the land. They get their butts kicked. They go back in shame. And they sit there, and God makes them wander in that desert for 40 years until that generation of warriors, the people from 20 years old up till, 50-ish, until that generation had died out. God made them wander for 40 years. So again, a transitional period. We see it between the Old Testament and the New Testament. God knows when these particular things fall into their slots, but we don't know. Technically, the New Testament didn't begin until the cross. That's Matthew chapter 28. That's Luke chapter 16 or so. That's entirely coming through the entire New Testament. It is still technically Old Testament stuff that's going on. Jesus made no bones about it. He was a Jewish rabbi, and he observed all the Jewish laws, traditions, and so on and so forth until the day he died. So that transition, where did the Old Testament stop and where did the New Testament begin? Wasn't in Matthew chapter 1 because they're still going through Old Testament type stuff until the end of Matthew, the crucifixion. The church starts in Acts chapter 2. Peter gets up and he preaches, 5,000 people get saved one day, and God says then he had added them unto the church. But the church as we know it didn't start until Acts chapter 10. At that point, in Acts chapter 2, the church was 100% exclusively Jewish. Only Jewish people were in the church. God says, no, that's not right. Because between Acts chapter 2 and Acts chapter 10, an event takes place, and that's Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7, Jesus once again presents himself to the nation of Israel through the preaching of Stephen. Stephen gets up to preach. He gives them another second chance, as it were, as a nation. It says that Stephen looks up to heaven. He sees Jesus standing, ready to come back. Had the nation accepted him, realized they'd made a mistake, they killed the wrong guy. They should have killed Barabbas instead of Jesus. They screwed up. They have a second chance in Acts chapter 7. They reject it. They stone Stephen to death. And at that point, God says, that's it for them. I'm now going to incorporate the Gentiles into the church as well. It is not an exclusive Jewish type thing anymore. I'm incorporating the Gentiles into it. Gentiles had no idea. The Jews had no idea that this was going on in the mind of God. Again, that transitional period. When does this door open and this door shut? Funk. And it's not until Acts chapter 10 that finally God tells Peter, hey, you incorporate the Gentiles into the church. Peter says, no way. It's a totally exclusive Jewish thing. And God says, get your act together. I'm bringing the Gentiles in. You guys have already rejected me twice. That's it. So God works in transitions. So when we talk about the rapture, when we talk about the tribulation, when we talk about the millennium, we can expect from God's history that the transition between these two is a transition period. It's not like on December 31st, we have, let's say, the rapture, and then on January 1st, the tribulation starts. There could be a transitional period of several months. There could be a year or two between the rapture and the actual official beginning of the tribulation. We don't know because it doesn't say. It's just there's some fuzzy areas in these transition periods. And so that's why I figure that God, true to his habit, uses transitional things in a big, big way. So at any rate, the next big thing on the prophetic calendar is the rapture. The rapture is only for born again Christians, period. If you are a husband and wife, and one of you is saved and the other one is lost, you both are not going to go up in the rapture. The one who is born again goes up in the rapture. The other one stays behind. That's it. Period. You won't see each other again until the great white throne, the judgment seat of God. There is no event that has to take place before the rapture takes place. Once the rapture takes place, then that kickstart a whole bunch of prophetic things that are recorded in the Bible. So the clock will begin with the rapture. After the rapture, there could be a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a year or two, who knows, a transitional period between that rapture and when the tribulation starts. The tribulation is a 7-year period divided into 2 sections, each of 3.5 years. The first 3.5-year period of the tribulation, it's tribulation. Things are bad taking place, but it's nothing compared to the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. Those 3.5 years are referenced as the Great Tribulation, as opposed to just the tribulation. Divided into 2 parts. The first part of the tribulation, you've got the rise of the Antichrist. I personally think the Antichrist is here today. He's born already. Could be a 15-year-old kid, could be a 30-year-old guy, I don't know. Could be a little infant. But I think personally the Antichrist is here. He won't be revealed, though, as the Antichrist until the tribulation. He could be a politician. He could be a military guy. He could be an economic guy. He could be some charismatic rock star type. Who knows what he is? But he will not be known as the Antichrist until the tribulation starts. That's why, you see all these books, all these TV shows, all these programs that, why so-and-so is the Antichrist. Well, so-and-so may be the Antichrist, but he's not going to be known as the Antichrist. So you can't put your finger on it and say, oh yeah, this is the guy. Barack Obama, he's the Antichrist. No, you can't say that, definitely. Hitler was the Antichrist, or Stalin was the Antichrist. It doesn't work like that. So I said, the Antichrist could and is probably here now, but he is not known as the Antichrist. Once the rapture takes place, boom, God's timetable kicks in, and now he will be revealed for what he is and who he is. He will go through that initial part of the tribulation, gathering the world into one economic, one military, one financial type entity. He will do it by a combination of flattery, intimidation, and conquest. So you've got one world government. The temple in Israel will be rebuilt in the first part of the tribulation period. Israel will be at peace. The Muslims will, get off their back for a while. Russia will get off their back for a while. Anti-Semitism, although probably, the undercurrent's still here, as far as the big main thing of it that Israel is always preoccupied with, it'll be gone. They can take down the wall. Israel has a wall around them. We're talking about the southern wall here in America that Trump wants to build. Israel's had a wall for years and years, and for decades. They've had a wall separating them from the Muslim part of the world there. It'll be gone. There's no need for it. First part of the tribulation, although still bad, if you're a Jew, it's not going to be nearly as bad. They will be at peace. There will be a treaty between the Antichrist and Israel. And because of the signing of that treaty between those two entities, then Israel will basically be off the block as far as on his radar. They will be relatively easygoing during this period of time. In the middle of that tribulation period, now Satan's feeling his oats. He's got the world basically where he wants them. Things are going his way. His man, the Antichrist, the false prophet, and so forth, they're all in place. He's feeling pretty confident. Now he's going to take this a step further. He is going to show himself for what he really thinks he is, and that's God. And we go back to Ezekiel chapter 14, Isaiah 14 on this, that Satan wants to be worshiped as God. And so the Antichrist, in the midst of the tribulation, in the middle part, he will go into the new temple in Jerusalem. He will plunk himself down on a throne in the temple. Bad thing number one. You don't sit in the temple of God on a throne. He will have a throne brought in there. He will sit on that throne in the temple. He will have a pig slaughtered in the temple. If you're Jewish, you don't have slaughtered pigs, especially in the temple. So once he does, and this event is referred to as the abomination of desolation. Israel had a treaty with the Antichrist. Nice guy, good guy. Hey, he got the Muslims off our back. He got the Arabs off our back. He's a wonderful guy. Until he sits in that temple, on that throne, and has that pig sacrificed and proclaims himself to be God. And at that moment, Israel's eyes as a nation are opened, and they realize what they've got themselves into, because now he is PO'd to the max, and he is coming after Israel. And Israel at that point, as a nation, has to flee on an individual basis, because they are fair game now for the Antichrist. And this part of the tribulation is where the book of Revelation comes in. The woes and the vials and the trumpets, the earth, the vegetation, third of it gone, the rivers, the oceans turned to blood, the sun not giving its light, the moon not giving its light, the demonic forces coming out of hell and so forth. All these things are taking place. You got the 144,000 witnesses with the name of God written across their foreheads. These are Jewish males, 33 years old, going throughout the world preaching. They are impervious to whatever the Antichrist can throw at them. He tries to kill them. He can't do it. Tries to shoot them, gas them, whatever the thing happens to be. They are impervious. They cannot be killed. They cannot be stopped. The whole world is going to be preached to by these guys. So there's all these things taking place here. At the end of that tribulation period, Satan gets the nations of the world to converge on Israel and what is referred to as the Battle of Armageddon. And that's when it says that he's amassed all the world's armies there. The blood is so thick and so deep that it is said to come up to the bridles of the horses. I don't know, 6 feet, 5 feet? Can you imagine that level of blood? There are tens of millions of people killed at that time. And they're killed primarily because Jesus Christ has come back from heaven. Revelation chapter 19. He comes back on that white horse, and it says the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses. That's us. We've been in heaven for that 7-year period. While the earth is going through all this junk down here, the church at the rapture has been caught up to heaven, and now we're in heaven at the judgment seat of Christ. Or what I like to refer to it as the greatest champagne brunch of all time. That's where we receive our rewards as to how good we were as Christians. Or we suffer loss because how bad we were as Christians. Either way. Now the circle is complete. Now we are coming back. Led by Jesus Christ, he wipes out the armies of the world. It says only 17% of those armies remain. The people in them. Just 17%. Blood up to the bridles horses, with the horses' bridles. So that basically ends that tribulation period. And now we get into the millennium. The millennium is a Latin word, milli annum, 1,000 years. And again, there could be a little transitional period between the end of the tribulation. When Jesus comes back, he's going to set up his throne in Jerusalem, in the temple. He will be there physically. You can watch him on the Fox Nightly News, CNN, MSNBC. Who knows what's going to be there? You can see him every day, all day long. You think you've seen a lot of Trump? Wait until Jesus gets here. I'm sure it'll be an all-day, everything TV blitz. But for the next 1,000 years, he will rule with a rod of iron. People will be born during this time. Once Jesus comes back, faith as we know it is basically out the window. We don't need faith anymore. Right now we need faith. I've never seen Jesus face to face. I've never heard his voice. I've never seen him. I've never been touched by him that I'm aware of on a physical basis. Everything, my relationship that has to do with him is based on faith. I believe that he's there. Can I prove it? No. I believe that he talks to me. Can I show you that he talks to me? No. I believe that he lives in my heart. Can I rip my heart apart and say, hey, here's Jesus right here? No. It's all by faith. But there comes a time when faith just becomes sight. I have a pen right back here. I say I have a pen here. You can't see it. You just have to take my word on it. And if you believe me, you've taken my word on faith that there is a pen here. Now, the pen. Doesn't take any faith now. You don't have to wonder. You don't have to guess. You don't have to hope. Here's the pen. Right there. Tangible, physical pen. No more faith required. Faith is out the window now. Don't need it. And that's what it's going to be during that 1,000-year period. There won't be any sermons. Oh, come to Jesus and give your heart to him. Trust in the Lord. Be born again. No, it won't be any of that. Because he's standing right there in front of you, talking to you. The whole thing is going to be based on works. So we have 1,000 years. During that 1,000-year period, Satan's locked up. After the Battle of Armageddon, he is taken and he's thrown into the lake of fire. From time immemorial, from the first words out of Adam and Eve's mouth until now, mankind has had a habit of blaming Satan for all of his problems, or at least contributing to the cause of all of his problems. He comes to Adam. He says, why have you done this? First words out of Adam's mouth. Oh, the woman whom thou gave me. He lays the blame on God. In other words, had you not given me the woman, I wouldn't have been in the mess that I'm here now. So it was the woman's fault, but ultimately it was your fault because you gave me the woman. So he comes to the woman and he says, what's your excuse? Well, the devil beguiled me. He fooled me. He tricked me. He faked me out. He spoke sweet nothings in my ear. And I fell for it. Oh, he was so cute. His eyelashes are so nice and blah, blah, blah. We've been blaming Satan forever. There's going to come a point during the millennial period for that 1,000 years, there won't be any satanic influence as such. There won't be any little demon sitting in your shoulder, whispering in your ear, telling you to do bad things. Mankind will have a 1,000-year period of which he has nobody to blame but himself. There will be literally tens of millions, if not billions, of people born in that 1,000-year period. They don't know anything about Old Testament stuff. They don't know anything about walking by faith. They don't remember the Battle of Armageddon. They don't remember the tribulation, any of this stuff. They're born into a utopian, Edenic, perfect world. And they live for 1,000 years in this thing. They've never been tested. They've never been tried. They've never been made to forced to be made to choose between good and evil, between God and Satan or anything else. They've just lived their lives for 1,000 years in total bliss and wonderfulness. At the end of that 1,000-year period, Satan is loosed out of that pit. Now, for 1,000 years, mankind can't blame him. All those new people born can't blame him. And it says that when he comes back, Satan, that he goes amongst the nations and he deceives the world. Oh, God isn't what he's cracked up to be. You think he's running this thing right? I can run it better. Oh, you should have seen the old days when I was running things. You should have been there in the Garden of Eden and watched me manipulate those two idiots. Oh, you should have been here when I did this, and I thwarted God's plan and forced him to kill everybody in the world except 8 people because I took my guys down there and messed up his plan and blah, blah, blah. I can hear it now. And these people have no reference to make it a educated decision. And so he deceives the nations. And they all rebel again. And once again, Israel, because that's the seat of Jesus' throne, that's where his headquarters is, once again, that becomes the focal point, and once again, the world converges with armies on Jerusalem. And once again, God destroys this world. Fire comes down from heaven and takes them out. And from there, we go right straight into the great white throne judgment. Now, this is where the world is judged. All the Old Testament people who were not saved or, go to paradise, they're going to be judged. All the people in the church age, from, Jesus' time until the rapture, all those who died without Jesus, died without being born again, they're all going to be judged at that point at the great white throne. All those people that were born in the tribulation and that 1,000-year millennial period, they will all be judged at that point. Some might get in to heaven, most will not. So the great white throne, that's when he says the books were opened, and if your name is not written in the Lamb's book of life, out you go. Simple as that. After the great white throne, then God says, look, I'm going to just clean house and make a new start. And so it says that there was a new heaven and a new earth. Why is there a new heaven and new earth? Because the first heaven and the first earth, he burned up. We're talking universe here, folks. Not just the world, not just the solar system, not just the Milky Way galaxy, the universe. He's going to burn the whole thing up. And he's going to start over and make a new one. At that point, New Jerusalem comes down. That's the heavenly city that we, the church, inhabit. The Jew will get the earth. The Gentile will get the heavens. You know, the planetary systems as far as time can go. And the church will get New Jerusalem. And so all three entities, Jew, Gentile, and church, taken care of. As I said, the Jew gets the earth, church gets New Jerusalem, and the Gentile gets the universe. Because there's going to be people born forever. And so the universe is expanding as we speak today. The new universe that God makes, it will continue to expand. So that's just a brief outline of what is coming. And again, I could spend a month on the two witnesses, Moses and Elijah. Take a month on the 144,000, how they have the name of God written in their foreheads and so forth. We could take time on the individual battles of Gog and Magog and the Battle of Armageddon. All these different things. This is just a brief recap of the whole thing. So again, if you want your study, Daniel chapter 7 through 12, Ezekiel 38 and 39, Matthew 24, and Revelation 6 through 22. And that'll give you a big heads up. And of course, there's passages all over, various other things. Joel, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, just read them all. All right, that's it. Heavenly Father, thank you. I thank you for this book. I thank you especially for the hope and the promise that we have of an eternity with you. The 7-year tribulation period for us is going to be, I always joke about, a great champagne brunch and the marriage supper of the Lamb and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, but at the same time, I'm not looking forward to the beating I'm going to take for being a lousy Christian. For the things that I've done that I shouldn't have done, the things that I should have done that I didn't do, just general whoop upside the head, swift kick in the butt. I'm not looking forward to that. But the 1,000-year millennial period, where we, the church, get to rule and reign with you as you rule this earth, that's going to be a cool thing. That's going to be neat. And then, of course, when we kick into the eternity, after the 1,000-year period, and New Jerusalem comes down from God out of heaven, and we are suspended just like a revolving planet, that city, and we get to spend an eternity with you. Oh, Lord, what can I say? I try to put these things into words that we can understand or feelings that we can relate to. And yet you yourself have said that if we can't understand physical earthly things, the way the atom works, the way molecules work, the interaction of synapses in the brain and all this stuff that we don't really understand on a practical level, he says, if you can't understand that, there's no way I can even begin to discuss heavenly things with you. It's so far out of your realm of even comprehension that it's worthless for me even to try. And so, Father, I just take that by faith. It is going to be so cool. It's going to be so neat. It's going to be so glorious There won't be any filter. There won't be any sin that we have to overcome. There won't be any dead bodies that we have to confront with that we're walking around in. The contact will be just you and us, straight, face to face, spirit to spirit. I can't begin to relate, Lord, but I can thank you. I can look forward to it. I can pray for that day. And I pray, Father, that each and every one under the sound of my voice will have that same hope, the anticipation, that longing for relief at the end of this tunnel. Lord, bless your people, I pray. And even so come, Lord Jesus.